Welcome back to Revelatorium with Kat the Route, the podcast that comes around once a month, just about as often as I have uploaded to my YouTube channel in the past month, which I feel dread even saying. I'm filled with dread every day because I cannot convince myself to get into the stew, to get into the editing bay and press some buttons on the keyboard that make a bunch of footage turn into a YouTube video. Like, I've done it literally hundreds of times before. If this is any encouragement, I am an experienced YouTuber. I've been doing this for 12 years and still there is resistance. There are blockages. I feel discouraged. Like, it is not easy to create anything. And especially a piece of content for social media, it feels so ridiculous. Like, maybe if I were working on like a play or a documentary or something, I would feel like, okay, it's maybe a little bit more understandable that I'm, a little reticent to like pounce on this. But it's not like, I'm like, this is something I've done hundreds of times over and I just can't bring myself to get in there. And it's an uncomfortable feeling. Like, it's more uncomfortable to not do it than to just do it. But every day somehow I end up choosing to do other things, which is actually one thing now that we're 10, guess what? This is episode number 10. This is episode number 10 of Revelatorium. So we got to the double digits, you guys. I was so forward thinking and optimistic when I made this podcast that, like, if you look in the description, every single time I've left 3 digits for the episode number because, like, I am fully well intending on getting to 100, but I didn't quite calculate the math in my head that since I upload these once a month and there's 12 months in the Gregorian calendar by which many of us live, that, like, to get to 100, that's going to take 9 years. But I'm here and I'm committed. And I'm like, if I've been on YouTube, like making YouTube videos for 12 years, like, I don't know where this podcast is going, but like, I'm going to make space. I think like you owe yourself to carve out space and have faith for longevity of projects. Like, I always advocate when people are making new YouTube channels or social media handles to always think about the sustainability and the fluidity of that handle. Because I think a lot of times someone's like, oh, I want to start like a baking account. And you make the title something like, Emma bakes a cake. And then you realize actually it's more of a cooking account. And then later on you realize actually it's not even a baking and cooking account. I like to clean too. And then it's like, wait, actually I want to talk about biking. I'm into biking now. I feel like it's just helpful to create something that has its own integrity where it's not so attached to like something so niche. And that's like pretty antithetical. I just watched a great TikTok. Unfortunately, I literally cannot remember the name of any TikToker that I watch, even if I'm followed to them. But he made this great TikTok about niching down and like the reason that Gen Z feels compelled to sort of like put themselves in boxes, and had some really profound things to say. But I am like always so anti-niching down, which sucks for the performance, like the quantitative performance of my channel, because niching down just like does perform better, but I just refuse. I'm like such a jack of all trades, master of none. Like, there's never been like one niche thing that I want to talk about. I just have so many themes that I want to explore. And as a result, like, this is part of maybe the discouragement I've been feeling. It feels good to talk about this because I'm like, who else should I talk about it with than people who are online in the same way that I am? Like, because, I would say majority of my friends are like I would say, a solid half of my friends are online. Like, they listen to podcasts, they're on social media, like they consume stuff like pretty actively. But most of my friends are not like creators, so they don't understand this perch of it. But it's been very rewarding to get closer and develop my friendships with other creators. Regardless, I have tons of creative friends, so they understand the point of like putting out a show or putting out, new choreography or something, but specifically this. But the discouragement I feel is that like there's so much inconsistency. Like, you would think after like 12 years, things would be very locked down and like almost formulaic, but no, like because I don't have control over like who sees my content, like the algorithm is the one pushing it out exclusively the algorithm on TikTok, unless you're on the following tab. And then on YouTube, it's like a lot of people, I guess, just watch the homepage. I don't do that, but I guess a lot of people just click on stuff on the homepage. And so, if I'm not niching down, if I do something kind of out of left field, like it's not going to be as well received. And a lot of times the things that aren't like as maybe not, I mean, well received numbers wise, but like a lot of those things end up being my most cherished projects. And sometimes when I do something out of left field, it performs really well. Like, I remember I made a video about my political radicalization that I was really worried about. And I look back at that and I'm like, what was I so worried about? Like, I've found so many of you through my political radicalization. And like the video I made, like interviewing people on the street about friendship, I was like, this is so new to my channel. I just don't think it's going to perform that well, but like numbers wise it's doing great. And I think it's made like a nice cultural impact. I think like a lot of the reason I've been on TikTok is that I feel like it's a very good cultural propagator. Like for my little theories and armchair ideas, like I can push those out and actually like, you know, create maybe something that people are talking about with their friends, or they reference, or like they put in their vocabulary. Like, you know, adding tools to the lexicon is kind of how I view it. But anyway, it sucks when you just like feel like something could just get a pittance of views. Like sometimes on TikTok, I could have a video that like I just like my 4 most recent videos. I actually haven't checked the most recent one because I'm like too nervous, because in the first 30 minutes, it only got like 300 views. And I was just like, that doesn't sound very good. At least on TikTok, they don't have the YouTube studio where it shows you like a ranking out of 10, how it's performing. Can you imagine though, if Instagram did that? I was just talking with my friend Amanda when she was visiting about that. Can you imagine, since like all of us are on like everyone on Instagram is like a creator. Yeah. Actually, not even then. Like I have some friends who are just on Instagram as viewers. Like they barely post. They'll post like once every couple of years. But for those of us that post more than once every couple of years, wouldn't it be so like bonkers if Instagram showed you like an hour after you posted something, this is how it's performing based on the last pieces of content you put out there? Like that would create such a hysteria. You know, that would create such a hysteria. Like if every story you posted, it were like, okay, in the first 24 minutes of this being up, it's performing in the bottom ranked 2 of your last 50 stories. Like that would just make you feel so shitty, because it's like, I'm not putting stuff out there to like do numbers. I'm putting it out there because first of all, I feel compelled to. It's just like an itch I've always had to scratch. I think a lot of people don't understand that, but I'm like, I've just always wanted to do this. Like it's always just been a part of me. It's never been like something I've had to think a lot about, and maybe I should think more about it, but it's like, you give me a platform, I like want to put my thoughts and ideas out on there and like make a record of like my existence and like plot those things. Cause it's like, you know, it's fun to be a documentarian and to like share and engross yourself in the culture. I did not expect to go on this kind of rant up top, but yeah, because I don't niche down, like my 4 most recent TikToks, like one did 2.7 million views. One did like, I mean, a few 100,000, like 300,000. And then my most recent one, I haven't checked since it got 300 views, but like, I'm assuming it's probably got like a few thousand. Like, it's just such a range. And I'm like, what do I do with that information? And then what I do is that I go to other people's profiles and I'm like, oh, well, their retention is like so much better. Like their engagement is like so much better. And I'm like, what the hell am I doing here? Like, how is it that I've been on the internet for so long and still I'm engaging in the same maladaptive behaviors that don't encourage me to put more stuff out? So yeah, I've been stuck in a little torpedo mode with YouTube, which is unfortunate. This podcast feels very effortless for me to do because the formula is very built in, and it like, it's, since it's monthly, there's like a cadence to it where it's like, oh, I know at the end of the month, like gonna have to do this, which I'll put a warning out there for episode 11. I will be in New York City. So I'm sure that one will be maybe a few days late, maybe even a week late. Okay, you guys. So you'll have to celebrate November 1st without me. If you listen to these on the 1st of the month, which I think would be like a cute ritual. I love rituals. I love celebrations. I think I need to have, more rituals. And one ritual I just completed was a camping trip on the equinox. I camped on the summer solstice last year, and I just thought that was a really beautiful way to like honor the changing of seasons. And I have to give it up to Seattle because despite the monstrosity of climate change, it is remarkably consistent with the changing of the seasons. And I'm a Californian, so I'm not used to seeing like shit change. Like it'll be very delayed and very subtle, if anything. But I remember last summer on the summer solstice, that was the first, so it's like June 21st. That was the first weekend like above 70 degrees in Seattle. And I was like, damn, June 21st, it's like kind of late, but like we camped and it was the first nice weekend. And I was like, wow, I feel like we were just gifted with this nice weather because we chose to celebrate the solstice. And then this year I planned a camping trip for the fall equinox. And it was the first weekend under 70 degrees that we've had like since like June or July or something. And and then it rained the next day. It rained a little bit while we were there. I could see the colors changing and I was like, this is just such a great thing to do to fully immerse yourself in the new season. I cannot recommend it enough. Wasn't planning on talking about this, but like just needed to say that. Okay, next thing I want to spend this inaugural double-digit episode on is actually a bit of a report back on my taking and leaving list from last month, because every single month I will set intentions and like push out my hopes and my hopefully omissions for the next month. I'm like, I don't want to include this in September. I do want to include this. But it's like rarely will I actually go back and see like, oh, back in June, that thing I said I was going to take, did it actually take to the next month? Did it actually? Because the taking and leaving, it's up for interpretation. It can be a manifestation. It can be a sort of a wish, a hope, a prayer. But I would actually like to see those things like take form. And I am pleased to report that my taking bullet point of meeting new people, that landed. It landed. It took flight during the podcast and it landed like immediately in September. I've been meeting so many new people through a few different forums. But one thing I wanted to highlight was like the way that I met these new people, because I went on an artist date, which is a concept introduced by Julia Cameron in her work, The Artist's Way, which is doing a like pleasurable activity solo, basically. So like doing something indulgent for your inner artist, like doing something sort of like a little luxurious thing. And I had a Friday afternoon where I took myself out to lunch. And ordinarily when I eat alone, I don't talk to anybody besides the waiter, besides the host, besides the staff at the establishment. But for the first time ever, I was at the end of my meal and I couldn't figure out if I was supposed to bring the check up to the counter to pay or if they were going to come collect it. And so I just turned around to my neighbor at the table next to me and I was like, hey, have you been here before? And she was like, yeah. And I was like, what do I do here? And she was like, oh, they'll come get it. And then it just ended up being a really natural 10 or 20 minute conversation that we struck up while I was basically just wrapping up my meal and she was just starting hers, and we like exchanged information. We ended up meeting up the next day and going to an art fair together. And I was like, that's so cosmic and wonderful. Like I've never been able to like do that before. And I don't think that literally would have ever happened if I weren't doing that as an artist date, like doing that solo. And I was sending a bunch of audio messages to my friend Anne-Marie, who is like another big believer in artist dates and like doing things solo, because you just experience like synchronicity like differently when you're solo. Like I feel like there's little magical moments that are like easier for me to pick up on when I'm alone than when I'm with other people, because as like an extrovert or just, I don't even know if it's because I'm an extrovert, but like when I'm with other people, I'm so engrossed in them and the conversation is so stimulating to me usually, or hopefully, that I'm not noticing my peripheral environment that much unless something really wild is happening and then I point it out and then maybe we have a hee-hee and a ha-ha about it. But when I'm alone, I just am more intent and like I am attentive and like I am more like just present. And so I think it invites like little casually magical moments to happen in my life. And so I just wanted to like kind of remark on that, because there was another listener that had written in last month about how important it was for them to like reframe moving to a new city. I think she moved to Paris and she had nobody. She had no partner, no job, like no friends. She was completely blank slate, but she had reframed it where she was like, what a wonderful amount of room and amount of space to fill up. Like I have a nice big empty container to see what gets poured in. And that's how I kind of view like going to something solo, is that like you make a container and it'll fill up. Like if you carve out the space to do something alone and just sort of like look around you and notice the environment, things will kind of fold in. Like after that magical little lunch moment, I walked down the street and there was this little bungalow that had a Tupperware of sand dollars that they had collected. And as I was admiring them, the family actually walked down the street and they were like, oh, take as many as you want. Like we picked those up from like Cannon Beach in Oregon. They're so special to us. And I just felt like that was such a magical little moment. And then I like turned the corner and went to this Valley of the Gnomes, which was this little park where there were like a million little hidden gnomes in trees and on benches and in bushes and on a bridge. And it was just such a whimsical experience. Then I went down to the beach and I struck up a conversation with the person that worked at the like hot dog stand, which I was like, hell yeah, there's a hot dog stand at this beach. I'm going to come back. And he was like, yeah, we're going to be open all winter. And he ended up being somebody like who was doing a political documentary project on like Stanford in the Bay Area. And I was like, oh, well, that's like so close to home for me. Like how wild. And I was telling him about like sort of the political education work that like I do. And I was like, I truly and honestly believe that I would not have picked up on half of that if I were with somebody else. And I usually prioritize like socialization over time alone, but it is so important to like make that container and see what fills it in. And so I did ask you all about things that you do alone, and I have more to talk about when we get to that portion, so I won't divulge it all now. Second revelation, I am a master interpreter. Okay, I am a little too good at reading into things, finding significance in insignificant things, finding meaning where maybe there is none, projecting, overthinking, like doing some excavation work where I find that I can spend a lot of time spinning my wheels trying to interpret a small thing that someone said. This is like especially true if somebody's vague or like short-winded or just not giving me much information. Like if you don't give me many dots, I'll still try to connect them. Like I'll still try to find a line that will connect them. And it might be the most curvy loop-de-loop line where you're like, how did she connect those two things? I'm like, I'll find a way. I will find a way, because that is like, it's almost like a little intellectual exercise for me where I'm like, how many ways could I interpret this thing that this person said? And which one is the most likely thing? Like if you give me a blank canvas, I'm going to splatter paint on that. It's going to be full. Like it's going to be like layer and layer and layer of paint. And it's not helpful. It is not helpful. It must have been adaptive at one point in my life to do that. And it is just like a little bit stimulating to just like do as a thought exercise, is like, how many different things can I kind of glean from this one thing that some person said? But I have been trying to rescind my master interpreter status and move more down to like the novice level, maybe like the apprentice level. I think that would be a more reasonable place for me to land. So I've been trying to, shed some of the vast knowledge I have of ways to interpret and like release that. That could be something I am looking to leave in September. And then a smaller revelation is that 27 may be the age for me where the world starts to feel really small. Because I'm in a new city, it shouldn't feel like there are, that many people that I know here, that things should kind of collapse in on themselves. But not even in person. I find that online, it's become so apparent that the world is small. Like I wonder if you were to poll people of like, does the world feel small in 1960 versus today, if people would feel that way more now or then? Because in a way, it's like you can see too many people's existences online, but also I've been going on like little, in my sort of in my sort of desperation to not sit at the computer and actually edit a video, which I know will bring me joy, but somehow I stopped myself from doing. In distracting myself from that, I have been going on little Instagram deep dives while I'll like click on somebody, and then I'll click on somebody that's tagged in them, and then I'll click on someone that they posted with or someone they're following, and then within like 2 or 3 taps, I will find someone who I have a mutual with, where I'll be like, why does that girl from college follow that comedian? Or I'll be like, why does that person I went to high school with like know this person who's a friend of the actor from that show? I'm just like, how is it possible that like without even trying, I've like stumbled across someone who's actually like, you know, a few tethers away from me? Like it's just like an odd feeling where I'm like, you know, it's possible if they just follow each other on Instagram, they met each other once at a party and it was nothing more than that. But I'm like, it's if I were to twist that revelation, I could say, you know what? A lot of things are possible because you actually know somebody who knows somebody you know who can make something happen for you, you know? And that'll be a tie back for later. So again, people with strong listening comprehension, that's going to pay off for you. Congratulations. Okay. Another revelation is that rejection sensitivity is getting really bad. One neuroses of mine is that I don't like to duplicate content on platforms. So like the stuff I talk about on my podcast, I try not to talk about on my YouTube channel, and stuff on my YouTube channel, I try not to talk about on TikTok unless I'm expanding on those ideas or like furthering them or like updating them. And this was the most recent TikTok I talked about that only got the 300 views in the first 24 minutes, which who the hell cares? Who the hell cares? Let's check what it's at now. Let's do this together. Exposure therapy. Let's see. Because one thing I do is I don't let myself like check TikTok unless I'm like posting on it. Yeah, it got like 2,000 views. And I was like, this is like a banger TikTok. Like I was like, this is going to do 6 figures. This is going to do numbers. And no, it went nowhere fast. And that's really disappointing because I didn't spend like hours and hours on it, but I put a lot of like thought and creativity into it. So anyway, since that's not doing numbers, I'm going to break one of my neuroses and talk about it more here to maybe an audience that will understand it better than people who are scrolling every 1.2 seconds on TikTok. So one of my latest revelations is that rejection sensitivity is getting really bad, which was actually the TikTok that did 2.7 million views. I was talking about that. And so I was like, oh, let me like further the conversation. And everyone's like, nope. Buck stops here. That was enough of you. We don't want to hear any more about this. But I was relating it to, well, it doesn't really matter. I'll just say that like rejection sensitivity is really bad. People don't want to put themselves out there anymore. People are not as willing to take risks, to ask for things, to be vulnerable, to like make a fool of themselves in public, to, make requests and like put themselves out there. And I think one arena that I didn't talk about when I was speaking on this on TikTok was the dating world, because I just really don't like to talk about dating that much on the internet, but it comes up. Dating apps, I think, have commodified our rejection sensitivity. So if we're too scared to, meet someone at a bar and make a bold move and ask for their number or buy them a drink, or if we're too nervous to like meet a friend at a picnic and then follow them on Instagram and even just DM them and ask them out, like if we're too scared to do that because we're afraid that they'll say no and it'll blow up our lives, then Hinge and Bumble and Tinder get to co-opt that rejection sensitivity by building an app where suddenly if someone's into you because they've swiped on you. So then it's like the safest landing pad ever to make a move. And then still a lot of people don't make a move. Like still they're sensitive to rejection. And I'm not ragging on people with rejection sensitivity at all, because it's tough. Getting rejected sucks. That's one of the questions I asked this month, was about the most recent time you were rejected and what you're avoiding because you don't want to get rejected. Like it's like universal human experience. The rejection does not feel good. I just think that the rejection sensitivity is getting to like an epidemic point. And it sucks because it's like, instead of us sort of like healing that and working through the exposure therapy of it and like working through adaptive coping behaviors, we end up just leaning into apps and profiteering systems that benefit from it. Like, I just feel like we're getting to a scary point in the dating scene. If people get so used to being on a dating app and knowing that like, oh, this guy's into me, this girl's into me, this person's into me because they swiped on me, and then going out in the real world, and because you're like, I don't know if they're single, I don't know if they're gay or straight or what, I don't know if they're into me. It's like, you just have to ask and find out. You just have to ask and find out. But if we're never flexing those muscles because all we're doing is swiping and staying in the sort of mutual attraction world, we're never going to build that. We're never going to loosen the sensitivity ever. And I'm getting scared because I'm someone who like, I want to meet someone out and about. And like, I don't like dating apps. Like whoa, girl on the internet says she doesn't like dating apps. Whoa. Like, it's not even for the reason that you think. It's because I actually like, fundamentally, I move at a slower pace than dating apps move at. Like, I feel like when people are in dating apps, it's very much tunnel vision. They meet you. They intend on it being a like romantic. That's kind of a good, you know, if I were selling, you know, fireplace accoutrements, I would maybe name it like romantal. You know, one of my ideas I didn't tweet out was like, oh yeah. It was a store that sells shelving units called Allegedly. Like allegedly, that would fit very well into like the Bob's Burger universe for the intro theme song. So if I may pitch that, and based on what I just said about the small world, I'm sure someone here knows someone who knows someone that works in that show. Is it still on air? I don't know. But like, let's make it happen, Catherine universe. Let's make it happen. Okay. If something from the taking list can come true, why can't this? But like allegedly, pretty good. Romantal, not quite as compelling, but I just came up with that based on a Freudian slip. Oh, you guys, here's something else I need to touch on. I went to this little theosophical bookstore, which is the combination. It's the nexus of theology and philosophy. What a fascinating field and domain. And there was a little book on synchronicities. And the author of the book was talking about how Freudian slips have meaning. Okay. So as a master interpreter, if I'm picking up a book and it's telling me that there's meaning in things I never thought had meaning before, I'm going to keep reading. I'm going to flip a few pages. I'm going to get to the end of the book and I'm going to put a bookmark, and I'm going to highlight, and I'm going to annotate, and I'm going to thumb through it, and I'm going to photocopy pages and print them on my wall. Okay. So it was saying there's meaning in Freudian slips. Okay. They're not a slip. It's more of a slide into a territory you should be inhabiting more. So their point, their little anecdote, I've been enjoying telling people this. Whether it's true or not, I actually don't give a fuck. I don't even think it matters. That's the thing about meaning and significance. Like, you're allowed to find meaning and significance. It doesn't hurt people. Only hurt people can hurt people. So the book was saying that when you have a Freudian slip, so like the example was, there was this guy named George, and he had a new person he had just met named Michael. And for some reason, George always wanted to call Michael David. He was like, every time I see this guy, I want to call him David. And I had that experience with one of my friend's boyfriends. I kept getting his name wrong because I was like, he doesn't look like a Steven. He looks like a Matt. And I kept wanting to call him Matt, but it was like weird. I think I actually ended up calling him Matt one time, and I was like, oh, fuck. So if you've had that experience where like someone's name should be something different. So George thought Michael's name should be David, and he just never told him for the first few times he met him. And then finally one day he was just like, for some reason I keep wanting to call you David. And Michael stops, and he's breathless for a few moments. And then he blinks a few times, and he looks back into George's eyes, and he says, David's gone. No, literally though, he was like, David was the name of my partner who died, my soulmate of 20 years, whose sweater I'm wearing right now. Boop, 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 boop. Like, holy fucking shit, you guys. That's what I'm talking about. It doesn't matter if that happened or not. There's something there. So pay attention to your Freudian slips. If you say romantal, that could be the name of like a huge franchise. That could be something. Okay. Trust yourself and your slippery tongue more. So romantic and sexual. Don't worry, you guys. I will pick up the thought from the ledge it was on and move it back to the counter. Okay. We're back on the counter now. I was talking about how on dating apps, people see you as like a sexual or romantic prospect. They don't see you as just like a person they want to get to know. And maybe this is because I am a woman dating men. Yeah, maybe that's that. But they see you because, okay, I mean, from the anecdotal experience I have from my queer friends, it's like, and literally multiple people wrote in on this month when I was asking you what new people you've met. Some people were like, yeah, I met someone on Tinder. We like went on a couple dates and then we realized it was more friends vibes. So now we're friends. And like, I cannot tell you like how many of my friends, like my gay and queer friends, like their friends are people they went on like a date or two with off an app and then realized it was more platonic vibes, or people that they actually dated and then moved from ex into friend. And I'm like, I've just never been able to do that as a quasi straight person. So, yeah, they see you as a romantic or sexual prospect. They don't want to get to know you just like holistically. It's kind of like tunnel vision towards what we're moving towards. And so there follows sort of like a very heteronormative pattern of like first date, you kiss, second date, I don't know what happens then, third date, maybe you sleep together. And I'm like, that's too fast for me. I'm like, I might not want to kiss you for like 6 months. There have been people that I've been attracted to where I didn't think anything of them for multiple months. So I'm like, this is moving at a pace that's too fast for me, but I can't actually tell you what pace I want to move at. I don't know. I just want to get to know you. But most people don't actually I don't really know examples of like men and women that have become friends after meeting on a dating app. I really don't have any examples of that. Like the representation's not really there for me. I don't see it happening. And so I'm just like, I would rather do the slow burn thing of like meeting somebody through, you know, some activity you're involved in or somebody at your local coffee shop, and you kind of have a little flirtationship for a while, and then you kind of verify whether or not you actually want to pursue this. And I'm going to hold my thought there and pick it back up. I'm putting it back on the ledge, and we'll remove it from the ledge when we get to the end of the episode when I read your responses, because someone commented on this very phenomenon and I want to bring it back up at that point when there's more material to respond to. Okay. I like to have resources and reading to do. Okay. Final revelation was thanks to a new person that I met. Okay. You can meet somebody one time and maybe never see them again, but they will gift you with a revelation so big and so bright. It doesn't have to be more serious than that. Like when I'm talking about meeting new people and not making that out to be anything, I'm talking about just meeting them where they're at, seeing them holistically for who they are, having a wonderful, stimulating, expansive conversation, and not like trying to guarantee that they hold any specific role in your life. Cause like, I'm a little bit of a relationship anarchist. And like I met up with somebody that birthed this revelation that was a friend of a TikTok mutual that I've never even met before. Okay. And we were talking when we met up for dinner that she was like, I feel like most people wouldn't do this. Like most people wouldn't meet up with somebody that's going to go work on a cruise ship for 5 months, doesn't live in the same city. Like you're probably never going to see them again. Most people would not take the time out of their night to like go meet up with a random stranger. But we both did because the mutual friend that we had in common like knew that we had so much to talk about, and we did. So when I tell you how rewarded I have been for taking meeting new people into September, I'm rich in the new people I've met. And I'm not saying that I'm not bragging to you that I have 20 new friends. Many of those people I will never see again, but it's just nice. And it's like, it just is, it slows down time. It expands your world. It keeps things fresh when you meet new people. Anyway, the revelation I had with her is that I experience a lot of difficulty building community because I'm not doing it within existing structures. I posted a oversharing-esque vlog on my Patreon this month, patreon.com/kathrau. It's always linked in the description of these podcasts. If you'd like to donate to me over there and like get some additional content, like I was speaking a little bit in that vlog about just some troubles I was having with feeling like I'm always having to like pour out to have any sort of fluid community. Like I don't feel like I just walk into I don't feel like I just end up stumbling into communities. Like communities don't find me. I'm 27. Like I no longer have the community of high school or orchestra or college tour guides or college marching band. I no longer have like a spiritual community. Like I don't have just like spaces that I enter where I show up and I know everybody and it's like hunky dory. I have that online. Like through like my political education project that I like organize with, but like I don't really have that in person. And I was feeling very remiss for that, but I was reminded by multiple of you in the comments on Patreon, which I love when people leave comments on Patreon. They're like so thoughtful and wonderful. And I was reminded by this new person that I met that like you do have to build community if you're not just relying on school or work or a program, like some sort of incidental structure. Like if I'm trying to build something that stands alone, because here's the thing is like a lot of times I think that those communities are preferable, that they are better or more desirable, mainly because they're less work, where it's like I just show up and like they already exist and they just seem kind of like easy. But you're not, if you're just relying on that, those things can collapse. You know, grad school ends. You know, like maybe you get injured and you can't be a part of your soccer league that you were a part of. And so if you're always relying on external structures to guide your community, there is a little bit of like volatility or risk in that. And you know what? There's volatility and risk in everything. But one thing I've been trying to do in like connecting my friends and sort of like building clubs and like structures here is building my own community. And it feels hard because it's a lot more friction. It's like literally building something from scratch rather than just entering something that already exists. And so I was comparing those two things, thinking that it should feel as easy to build community as it is to just like exist in one that was already built. No, I'm a startup founder. Okay? Move aside, Evan Spiegel, you know, fuck off, Mark Zuckerberg. Like I'm building something way more valuable than any tech startup, which is human connection that we are pursuing for free and for the love of it all, for the hope of it all. Canceled plans just in case you call and say maybe behind the mall. Like I will cancel something to meet up with a friend, you know? I will, because I prioritize community and it's like it takes a lot to build those things. So, yeah. And now if I may continue to follow my oratory intuition, I feel like I've droned on enough that it's time to pass the mic to the star, outstanding Lena Daniel, who is the Revelatorium with Catherine fact checker, who I was going to say painstakingly, but probably like painfully listens to every word I say and marks down all of the inane references I make so that she can fact check them and make sure that I'm at least half on the money. And if I'm not, and if I'm only half on the money, we'll fill in the rest of the deposit this episode. So this is a refresher on episode 9. Before we entered the double digits, what did I say that needs repeating and correcting? And I'll fill in the context gaps since I know it's been a month or longer since you've listened to these.
Hey y'all, it's Lena Daniel back with another fact check of last month's episode. In the beginning, Catherine talked about the cadence of things. So, for example, washing sheets, the dermatologist recommends every 2 weeks. That's the same cadence for how often you should check your bike pressure. Generally, they lose PSI pretty quickly depending on the thickness of the tire.
Okay, I was talking about like the conventional like frequency with which you should change your sheets, change your bike tires. It sounds like those are both 2 weeks. I might have led some of you astray because I said for bike tires once a month, and somebody did leave a comment about that. And I will say the cycling community, very vocal and oftentimes love to give unsolicited advice. That being said, I love to bike. I'll accept it. Because I don't bike that often, I feel like my tires don't lose pressures easily. Maybe that's, I hope that I'm not piggybacking on a fact check. That's going to necessitate another fact check.
Moving on to dreams, Carl Jung believed that dreams are a way for the unconscious mind to communicate with the conscious mind. He also believed that dreams are symbolic and can have multiple meanings. To do dream work, it's important to keep an open mind and look at dreams from different perspectives.
Yes, I have continued to have bonkers dreams. I mean, I've always had bonkers dreams. I would say I haven't had as many nightmarish dreams as I did when I talked about this last episode, but I haven't been able to find them. I'm a master interpreter, but not when it comes to dreams. Okay. I would love to meet somebody who would care to dissect my dreams. To me, that's what a soulmate is. To me, that's what a life partner is someone that cares about you so much, that is so attracted and likes you so much that they are willing to hear about the things that you were dreaming about when you were unconscious and work through them with you.
The next fact check is about the film Foe that Catherine briefly mentioned. It's scheduled to premiere at the 2023 New York Film Festival on September 30th, and it'll be released in the US by Amazon Studios on October 6th of this year.
And I will be going to that opening night with a dear friend to support Saoirse Ronan and Paul Mescal, okay? Irish talent needs to be supported. Another film that's coming out is All of Us Strangers. Another Irish banger. Paul Mescal again. Let's keep him booked and busy till the rest of eternity, okay? Because he is like such a phenomenal actor. I did rewatch Normal People, and it's devastating like how much he can convey just through a simple look. When he give me that look, yeah, the penny's coming off. Dude, I want to believe that Paul Mescal listens to Nicki Minaj so bad. Like when he's in those little running shorts and he has his wired headphones and he's like walking around London. Like I want him to be listening to, you know, Stupid Hoe or Roman's Revenge or something off of Pink Friday. Okay. But yeah, All of Us Strangers is Paul Mescal and the one and only Andrew Scott of Hot Priest fame. And it's a gay love story. It seems like a very surreal story as well. So I'm like very intrigued, and it's by Andrew Hay, who did Looking on HBO, one of my favorite series, portrays San Francisco better than I've seen most shows ever attempt to. He also did Weekend, which is such a gravitating, this is, now I'm like paranoid that like everything I'm saying about this fact check is going to produce another fact check, but like, it's a very gravitating film of a brief encounter. So there's a lot of good Paul Mescal fodder coming out.
Moving on to bruising. So there's various risk factors associated with random and easy bruising, such as genetics, age, and sex. And while there's no evidence of a specific genetic component that drives this, studies have shown that people who bruise easily often have close family members who also do that. The next fact check is about having mirrors to dance, and relying on mirrors can definitely lead dancers to focus more on how they look rather than how their movement feels, and you essentially objectify yourself and not focus on your sensations. So it allows you to see your performance really easily and learn movement quickly. But people who use the mirrors all the time can lack this level of kinesthetic awareness because they're used to checking in the mirror to see if their bodies look right. That's all to say that it's very normal that Catherine feels like she can't dance unless she has a mirror.
Okay, this is so resonant with me. I was talking about mirrors because I was talking about how whenever I get ready for bed, I'm always listening to music and like dancing in the mirror. And because I'm always dancing in the mirror, and that's the time that I do it the most, is when I don't have a mirror. I feel self-conscious, like I don't really know what's going on. That's exactly what Lena was speaking to. Two incidents recently that I did not have a mirror. Number one, I went line dancing and they didn't have a mirror, and I think I would have done much better if I had a mirror, because I guess I am objectifying myself and I've become reliant. But the second time when I was camping, we actually filmed a music video to say a little prayer from the Glee cast. Wonderful triad music video and choreography. I might be persuaded to post that somewhere. I reposted it on my story, but it's already expired by the time you're hearing this. But we just learned that like in one of the little campground, like there was like this random little museum about like a military camp that like FDR had set up there. And we were like dancing in this like museum while it was raining. And then we ended up filming the choreography. But I learned all that choreo without a mirror and did just fine. So maybe it's just time I build up my tolerance with non-mirrored dancing. But also maybe that's why I like to do it in the bathroom, is that I like to objectify myself. Maybe that's a key.
And then the last fact check that I'll talk about is friendship and how long it takes to form a really close friend. And research shows that it takes between 40 and 60 hours to form a casual friendship, 80 to 100 hours to transition from a friend to more than that, and then more than 200 hours together to become best friend. So that's all to say that when Catherine mentioned 8 hours of hanging out, that's not really sufficient to form a friendship yet. Thanks for tuning in.
I actually can't remember what I was referring to with those 8 hours, but not to plug my TikTok again, but I made a TikTok last year about speedrunning friendships and moving through those hourly buckets. And one way to do so is camping. For the third time this episode, I dare to bring up camping. All right, let's move right into taking and leaving. What are we taking from September into October, and what are we leaving? I don't know. I know what I am, and I got to hear about some of you. But if you didn't submit the survey, which I put on my Instagram story and on my YouTube community tab on my Cather Out channel, I realized I should be putting it on the Revelatorium community tab. So I think I'll start doing both of those from now on. But if you want to participate in that, check on like the 27th, the 26th, 27th, 28th of every month is usually when they go up. And then I'll record the episode like pretty soon thereafter. So get those in. If you don't, comment them down below. I would love to hear your revelations. First thing I'm taking is using headrests for their God-given purpose. This is the first time in my life that I've had an office chair that had a headrest. I got it from a sponsorship for a video, and it's like a gamer chair kind of thing. And I will notice all the time the way my body naturally wants to sit is my neck is craned forward. And so I literally have to like suck my chin back to like reach the headrest. And then as I've been I was driving to the campground, which thank you to a dear subscriber who loaned the car for that. The Cather Out community provides and provides and provides. When I was driving, I realized I need, like, putting my head on the headrest feels so uncomfortable because I'm used to just holding my neck forward, but it feels so good knowing that potentially I'm realigning my spine by actually using the headrest. Like, there's a reason it's in the position it's in. I'd always sort of taken it as like a gentle maybe suggestion, but now I'm like, oh, no. That is guidance of where your spine should be. And if I don't want to look a damn mess, maybe I should actually observe good posture. Okay, other thing I am majorly taking into October that I sort of developed on my own and then was confirmed by my therapist as well as the new person I met at dinner, is fighting my cognitive distortions by writing down my social life on my paper calendar. So I have a beautiful physical analog calendar that I hang up in my kitchen. It's the kind that has a square for every single day. And in past years, how I'd use that was the way that my mom used it, which was like the beginning of every month or the beginning of the year, you sort of like make notes of where the vacations are and where, you know, certain appointments are and certain big events are. And you sort of ordain like on the calendar what's going to happen. And typically it's what I did, but this month for the first time, I decided to use it retroactively. And after a day would happen, you know, before I got ready for bed, I would write down like the activity I did that day. Like if I went to yoga with my two friends, I'd write that down. If I went to an improv class, I would write that down. If I saw a concert, if I went to Trader Joe's with a friend, I would write that down. And the reason that I've found so much value, and I'll definitely be carrying the torch into October to light my lonely nights, is that I do tend to have like a lot of cognitive distortion around my social life and like thinking that I don't have a life. Like that is an intrusive thought where I'm like, I don't have a life. I'm not doing as much as other people. Like everyone else is hanging out without me. Like I'm not doing enough, because I have been sort of relapsing into like a depressive state. Like over the past few months, like I've just kind of been in and out of that mode on the darkest nights of my soul. I'll find myself tapping into that, like fear. But every time I look at the calendar, I'm like, shut the hell up. You literally can see everything you did in September, and you did so much. Like you did so much. You did not waste your life away. Like you are pushing forward. You're doing so much. And it's so hard to wallow and like make up little stories in your head when the actual truth and the nonfiction is up on your calendar. And the friend that I met was like, oh yeah, I do that every single day. I'll write down like if I got a little compliment, or if someone said something nice to me, or if like I got good news, and like I'll write down all the little activities I did that day. I don't think that I'm going to be writing down everything that I'm doing, but like the major bullet points of like what went down, or if I did have something I want to remember. John Wilson does this. If you watch How To with John Wilson, I can't remember which episode it was, but he showed that for the past like 9 or 10 years or something, he has written down every single day, almost hourly, what he has spent his time doing. So that if someone asked him, hey, what were you doing the night of September 6, 2014? He could pull that up and look at it. And I don't know if anyone remembers the podcast Serial from NPR, but part of that, it was a murder trial, and they would ask a lot of the witnesses, what were you doing that night? And most people couldn't remember, and that was sort of like early social media days, so people didn't have as much evidence. But I am always taking photos every single day. I am tweeting, I am posting on YouTube and TikTok, and I'm writing in my journal every day, and I'm putting stuff on the calendar, and I'm texting people. So there's a lot of documentation of what I'm thinking about and doing and spending my time on every single day. And I like having that so visible in like a written form on my calendar. I highly recommend that if you also struggle with kind of like finding back those thoughts of like, I'm not doing much. It's like, actually, I did a lot. Okay, I'm also taking choosing to spend my time on something rather than apologizing for slacking. And what I mean by this, I got this from my friend Cam, where they'll always say like, oh, I chose to hang out with my friends instead of pack. Like I chose to go on a run instead of prep for my move, because those things are choices. Those things are priorities. A mentor from college, it was like such a formal thing. He would always say like you have the time, you just don't prioritize. Just something isn't a priority to you if it doesn't get done. And even though that was kind of like hustle grind set mode, I think it is true. Like I think you have a limited hours in the day. Certain things just don't get priority. And so a lot of times I'll beat myself up because I'm like, oh, like I ended up scrolling on TikTok instead of washing my dishes because I'm a freaking flop. But it's like, you know what? I'm gonna put an asterisk on that, because I don't feel like a lot of times I am choosing to scroll on TikTok. It's something I kind of fall into. I'm like hoodwinked into doing it. I want to take more autonomy and like control and agency over my life to be like, I am choosing to spend my time on TikTok. But a lot of times I feel resentful when I come out of like a social media fugue state, because I'm like, I feel like I didn't make that choice. I feel like it just happened to me because those apps are preying on my attention. But a lot of times it's like, okay, I chose to FaceTime a friend instead of organize my closet. And like, I'm going to make peace with that because I made that choice. And it just it allows me to have a little bit more self-compassion instead of being like, oh, I fucked up and I was lazy because I didn't do both those things. I did one. And finally, I am taking stand-up comedy into October. I know this is probably coming out of left field, but like I began my stand-up comedy career this month. I went to my first stand-up open mic with my friend Amanda when she was in town, because she's taking a stand-up class. And I figured what better, the open mic. So basically the origins of this are that going back to when I was 7 to 8 years old, whenever people would ask for like my dream job or like what I want to do when I grow up, I would always write monkey trainer / comedian, because I thought it would be more than possible to combine those two things. Okay. Half of that has fallen away. I still love primates, love monkey. It's funny because like I had a really big viral TikTok moment because of the word monkey, actually. So like these things follow you. Like the things that you wanted for yourself when you were a kid, sometimes if you're unblocked enough, they'll follow you into your adulthood if you don't push them away so much. But monkey trainer, from like an animal ethics standpoint, not currently interested in, but comedian, I'd always been interested in. And I feel like I kind of found like the shadow form of comedy. Like I was a college tour guide, which is basically just stealing all of the jokes from the Jungle Cruise operators in Disneyland and reformatting them for a collegiate audience. Like that's basically what a college tour guide is. So I was making little yucks and yums on those tours, and I was getting laughs on those tours, and like that was kind of like a faux comedy. And then actually in marching band, I would get up on the mic every single time we had a bus trip. That was like a part of it. Is you actually had to do like a little tiny, like a tight 30, I would say. So like in comedy, it's like, you know, your tight 5 is like, you know, just 5 minutes of stand up that you kind of get prepped and ready to go. So you can just go up on any stage and you can do 5 minutes of comedy. And then eventually you work your way up to like, you know, 10 minutes, 20 minutes. And then very, very successful comedians will do like an hour long special. And in band, they would make every single person go up on the bus, and you would have to say your band name because everyone got a band name, and then you'd have to give a joke about it. And so I was writing, that was my first experience of writing jokes and then telling jokes on the mic. I don't think I got many laughs. Like, I don't think that I actually did that well on that bus, but like being a tour guide, being in marching band, those are both comedy. And then obviously like YouTube, like I infuse so much of my own personal comedy into this podcast. I infuse so much of my own personal comedy into this. And then I feel like every single Zoom call I'm on, I am performing Zoom comedy. Like, I feel like I'm always trying to make people laugh on the meetings I'm on the calls I'm on. Like, and I can see that they are. Like, I feel like I'm a very proficient Zoom comedian, but something I have really been yearning for, that I talked about in my most recent YouTube video, from a month ago, because that's the most recent one, harkening back to the beginning of this episode, is that I want to lessen my presence in the digital sphere and like spend more time in the real world. I'm a real world supremacist, and like doing improv was like one way for me to do that. And like stand-up comedy to me is like the closest like conversion. Like doing a live show and like performing on stage is the closest thing I can envision like for my digital like creations. I didn't say that in a coherent way, but basically like doing like live, it basically when I got up and I did stand up, it felt like live vlogging. Like it felt like I was just vlogging up there, first of all, because the lights are so bright, I couldn't see anyone in the audience. So it just felt like it was me. And then second of all, it's like I just used my sort of normal speech cadence up there. And so it felt very natural. And it really, my heart was beating out of my chest just because it was, you know, it's exhilarating to do something new and like to be on stage. But I found that it felt like a natural extension of what I'm already doing here, but it's also so different because I've never written down jokes. I've never written comedy besides what I was talking about on band buses. I'm always just ad-libbing, and like I feel like conversationally I can be very humorous, and that's what most people say, is that they can like bounce off their friends and stuff and riff and like make jokes that way. But it's a completely different art form to write jokes and have a punchline and a tag and like do all of that. So I finally did it. Like this is like, what did I talk about that? Yeah, I talked about that maybe 2 or 3 podcast episodes ago. Like the art forms you like to consume the most, you should try them and just like see if you like doing them as much as you like consuming them. Like dance, for example, I might like watching dance more than I like doing it myself. But well, I don't know. I don't even know if that's true. But I'm just saying I like watching dance. I don't always have to be doing it. But with comedy, I'm like, I love listening to comedy. I love watching comedy. I'm like, I should try it. And the first open mic like went really well. I didn't tell anybody that was my first time going up. And afterwards I did. And the show producer was like, that was your first time? Holy shit. Like great set. Like I feel like everyone was really encouraging. Like I got laughs. And it was cool to meet. That was another way that I met a bunch of new people. It was cool to meet all the comics afterwards. And I felt like these people don't need to be my friends, but like it's just nice to meet people who have, you know, a strong sense of humor and like are witty and like are making observations about our culture, because that's like what I like to do. Like this podcast is me making observations about like my inner world and bringing them outward. But I feel like my YouTube channel, a lot of times it is sort of like observing like how culture is changing. On TikTok, I'm trying to like, I like people who are trying to analyze, interpret culture and turn it into a joke. And that's what comedians do. Did a second open mic a few days later, and that one did not go over so well. And it did kind of feel like a little bit of a rejection, and it sort of crushed me a bit. But I need to just go back out there and get after it. And you all were so encouraging. Those of you that follow me on Instagram, like I posted just like a screenshot of me on stage, and everyone's like, tell me where to pull up, I'll buy a ticket. And I was like, this is great, you guys. Like I would love to like have a live show. And it's just so meaningful. Like, cause I've never, like when I'm vlogging or when I'm doing this, it's like, I don't hear the feedback, which is almost in some ways it's like less vulnerable. I feel like it's much more vulnerable to go up on stage and like tell something you think is funny and then nobody else gets it. And you're like, huh? Here, at least it's like, I don't care if they got it. Like, no, it's not that I don't care if you get it, but it's just like whether you get it or not, I needed to put this out for myself. So yeah, comedy will be following me. I refuse to let that second open mic that didn't go as well crush me. Like that's not going to happen. I'm bringing this into October. Leaving breaking glass episodes. I have 2 breaking glass episodes and 1 breaking ceramic episodes. I'm not talking about Breaking Bad. I'm talking about objects in my home. Like there were just like a few days where I was dropping shit left and right. Like I have this glass container that I put my bananas in to freeze in my freezer for my smoothies. And I just like bumped my shoulder into a countertop and dropped it on my kitchen floor, and it shattered into a million pieces. And I have to give myself props, because a past version of myself would have like really beat myself up for that and been like, oh my God, this is going to ruin my day. I just kind of silently was like, oh, too bad, and just like swept it up and cleaned it up. And then later that day, I hung up a piece of artwork, and it fell down and the glass shattered into a million pieces. And that was a lot of work to clean up. And then I was taking the AC out of my window, and it knocked over a really beautiful planter that I got from this Australian artist. So that was a bummer. It's like, you know, it's just like a bummer, but also it made me think like, what's the significance in those events? Maybe I'm not leaving the master interpretation. I'm talking about leaving them. When I'm talking about I don't want to be a master interpreter anymore, I'm leaving interpersonally like I don't want to interpret other people's behavior and actions towards me. Don't want to do that anymore. But interpreting things that happen to me, like little incidents like this, I'm like, I literally had my friend Google, like, what does it mean to break glass? And she kind of brought up that it was almost like a little like Mazel Tov moment. Like if you've been to like a Jewish wedding, like they you know, have a glass that they stomp on during the wedding ceremony, and it's like Mazel Tov. It's like a celebration. And so I was like, that's a nice reframe to look at these broken glass episodes as like almost like a Mazel Tov to my new apartment. Like it's a welcoming. It's sort of like breaking new ground. So I'm gonna reframe those. But I'm still wondering why that's happening to me all at once, because I couldn't remember the last time I had like shattered glass. I'll also be leaving inertia. Like I said, it's just been taking a lot more for me to generate movement for me these days. Like I'll sit and I'll ruminate a lot. It's hard for me to transition to do new tasks recently. Like I just feel like I have been like my mood has been better, but my energy has still been very like depressed. And it's might be related to my sleep, but that, and I want to leave insecurity over my creative career, like I was talking about up top. Okay, now for the audio viewers, I'm putting on my glasses, which is a signal that we are moving on to your September Revelatorium, what you wrote in and what happened to you all this month, and a lot did. This was a juicy month, okay? So starting with what people are leaving in September, Kay, who is 27, said that she is leaving I love yous stuck on the tip of my tongue. Woo! Sometimes you're all writing like little poetic moments in here. And this was a delight. I was like, Oh, I could feel this one. That's why I highlighted it to read to you all, because I'm like, oh my God, I haven't had that in like so long. Like I haven't had the anticipation and the reservation about saying I love you to somebody in so long, but that is like, oh, such a fluttery moment in time. Like I'm glad that you stamped that into this Google form, you know, as maybe wonky as that is to put beautiful little romantic moments into a Google form. I'm glad you did, because I'm living vicariously through you, and I cannot wait until it drops off the tip of your tongue and out of your mouth, and report back when you do. I want to know. I want to know. Emma, who's 28 in New York, said that she is leaving the stupid feeling we all get thinking that there's a jumbotron above us scoring how we are doing compared to everyone else. There is no scoreboard or countdown, and stop listening to older people telling you there is one. Yeah, needed to hear this. Like I started this one because I was like, I need to hear this. And I bet there are a few of you that could use the reminder as well. Like, because sometimes I just look, like talking about numbers on social media, it's so hard having your creations be so public and so quantifiable. In a way, it's like doing open mics for stand-up, for example, those aren't quantifiable. It's like you can kind of hear the amount of laughs in the room, but it's really hard to just like one by one compare and rank everyone and how they did. But sometimes I struggle with, like, on social media, it's so easy just to look at like, oh, well, that person's more successful than me because they have this type of engagement, and it's just not worth it. Like nobody else, I think, is comparing me that way to other people. Like, and so why would I need to be doing that? Anna, who's 25 in Seattle, said she is leaving the Jewish year 5783, which just ended on September 15th. I love leaning into the fresh start of a new year in the fall rather than the traditional January start. 5783 was filled with many difficult moments, and I'm ready to take the lessons I learned and have a better 5784. Jews get it so right for this, okay? Much love to my Jewish Revelatorium listeners, because I love Jewish holidays. They fall at the right time. And unfortunately, our like Protestant Christian, culture doesn't usually allow for like the proper time to celebrate these Jewish holidays. But like specifically Rosh Hashanah, I think, is the Jewish New Year. That is so profound, because the fall does feel like the start of the new year. I think the Persian New Year is sometime around the spring or maybe February. I just don't think January is the start of the year. I think September, this does feel like a new year. And I love reminders that you can just start again whenever. And I also love reading that it's 5784, like I want to start calling the year. I want to stop saying 2023 and I want to start saying 5784, I love reorienting around, like, because I jokingly, I'm always referring to like the Gregorian calendar and how, this comes around once a month because that's how we fall. But I love thinking about like, what if we used a completely different calendar and system, and like 5784, that sounds so much sexier than 2023. Okay. Helen, who's 19 in Germany, is leaving this guy that I thought I had a crush on. We saw each other again in a group setting, and I don't know if there's anything there, but I don't want there to be. So I'm leaving that behind. And this is what for the listening comprehension lifters, people that make listening comprehension gains, you may remember that I was talking about not liking dating apps because I'm more of a slow burn. I want to get to know somebody. This is why, because sometimes in the process of getting to know somebody, you do get the ick, or you do realize there's some key way that you're incompatible where it wouldn't be worth sort of like committing to, really showing up for that person in like a very intimate way. But on a dating app, you don't really have the time, the space, the perspective, the distance to like fully evaluate like how that is sort of landing for you. And so I respect the hell out of you, because there was this episode that I had at a certain time in my life where I kind of was really falling for someone like really, really fast, where we spent like every day together for like a week, and I was like really attached to him. And after that week was over, I was in tears. I was crying because I was like, I just know that we're not going to spend that much more time together, because like school was starting and like it just wasn't going to happen. And then throughout that semester, I actually realized, oh, I don't have feelings for him like I thought I did. I did get the ick, and I was glad he was actually very emotionally immature. Like that would not have been the right person for me. So I'm glad I didn't pursue that. But if we hadn't met and just gotten to know each other outside of the context of like we're dating, I don't know what would have happened in that situation. In terms of what you're all taking into October, Emma, who's 20 in Lawrence, Kansas, said lap swimming. It's a great workout, but also really calming. And I am flagging this because I see this for myself. I do. I had my last swim of the summer. I think there's actually some warm weather coming up, which I'm surprised by in October. Might not be warm enough to dip, but I had my last swim this month and there was this wonderful woman doing laps in the lake. And I was like, I would love to live so close to the lake that I could just commit to doing that every single day. It's like a little bit too hard for me to get to do that every day, but I would love to be a swimmer later in my life. I feel like I have the limbs for it. Chloe, who's 19 in New Zealand, or Aotearoa, said, putting everything into perspective. I can't remember all the things I'd stress about less than a year ago. And the things I do remember, the stressing was for absolutely nothing. Everything works out in the end, even if it's not in the way you want it to. Another one I just want to flag, because I need to hear this, and I figured at least one other person would too. Like, I'm stressing out about a lot right now, and I am trying to remember like even just my social media performance. The videos I was stressed out about a year ago, I don't mind how those ended up landing numbers wise now. Like, I'm not thinking about those videos. It's always just the fresh stuff that's really kicked up dirt in your mind. But like, that dirt's going to settle, the rains will come, grass will grow. You're not going to be tromping around on the same mud puddles. Don't worry. SJ, who's 25 in Iowa, is taking fungal rash. I'm like, did you mean to put that in leaving? Like, do you want to take that? Is that a good thing? Okay, I did want to share another one from Anna in Seattle, who adopted a cat because of the discussion I had about voids last month. She said that she said that she was thinking a lot about that from the episode, and the deep void helped motivate her to finally make moves to adopt. So look at the moving and shaking we are doing here, okay? Mazel tov on your new cat. I don't know if that's the appropriate way to use mazel tov, but another one from Katie, who's 24 in Missouri, said that she was inspired by a prior episode of this very podcast to reach out to a few old friends that I haven't contacted much for some time. Some a few months, some a few years. I've had such a wonderful time reconnecting with them during September, and I'm excited to bring those relationships into October. Admittedly, I was a little worried about it because it's been 5+ years since I've spoken to them, but I've changed a lot since then. But so have they, and we were still able to talk just like old times. I'm grateful to this community for giving me that push. Yeehaw! Let's fucking go. Moving right along into our third question, which is, did you get to know any new people last month? How did you meet them? What do you think of them? This was in reference to my intention to meet new people, and I wanted to see if that happens monthly for you all. And it did for an anonymous writer who was 26.67 years old in Denver, who said an old roommate introduced me to her new roommates via a yoga class, and they seem cool, but I don't really hang out or talk often to the old roommate since she has a boyfriend, / there's always been a boundary there, so I want to be mindful of as a dude. She's a cool person, so it sucks that we can't be closer friends, but I'll take a distant friendship over nothing. Her new roommates both have boyfriends as well, but remind me that I want to be around people that I actually admire / can't settle for friends or a relationship with people that I'm not excited about the connection with. And I love this perspective because, as I was just talking about, like, I feel like most guys don't just like get to know, like, I've just experienced a few people this summer where it was clear that they had very quickly sorted me into the like romantic interest bucket and weren't just like getting to know me holistically, and I had not sorted them into a bucket. And so when they sort of like came on to me pretty early on, I was like, whoa, like, that's not what I was interested in. And it would kind of like upset me because I'm like, why can't I just like make friends with a guy? Like, why is there always this like thing looming? And so it sucks that on your end you're feeling that too, where it's like your friend doesn't want to get as close because she has a boyfriend, and maybe that would be like, I don't know, a faux pas or something. I'm like, I don't feel like that should be a threat. But I'm glad you met people that you admire. That's the best thing. Like, the best friendships are built on admiration, I found. Anonymous 1221 in Rhode Island said she met two people and met them both at a running group. I don't think I'll be good friends with either, but it's nice to join a new group and make new acquaintances. I have a few family members and close friends, but I think acquaintances are a critical part of a full social life and the one I've lacked most sorely since working remotely. And that's why I set the new intention to meet new people, is that I'm like, I am very blessed to have many close friends, most of them long distance, but they come to visit me often and I FaceTime them every single day and or most days, and I feel supported in that realm. It is kind of like the loose ties and the people that I bump into and people to casually invite to my housewarming party that I'm kind of missing out on. So I like that you pointed to that interest as well. Okay, this one, you guys. Olivia, who's 22 in Salt Lake City, made a friend while swinging at the park in her neighborhood. It was so magical. Now we swing every Sunday at the park and chat for an hour or two, and we don't even have each other's numbers. A true in real life friend. I think they're super funny and quirky, and I'm so glad I met them. What the fuck? You guys are living like this? I'm claiming this, okay? I want a swinging friend. You know how good swinging feels? That is the best thing ever because you're just stimming out. I've never swung for 2 hours with somebody. I cannot even fathom how fulfilling and rewarding and wonderful that is. And the fact that you don't even have each other's numbers, you just know to show up at the same time. That is so cinematic and just fantastical. I'm so happy for you. Truly so happy for you. And I'm where is my closest park that has a swing set? One of my most closely held beliefs is that I will have, if I ever have property that has space for it, I will have a full adult size swing set. I will. Hannah, who's 25 in Alabama, met a lot of my friends, high school friends that were visiting. It really gives you an insight into your friend's life before you knew them and the person they potentially were. Also met my friend's mom for the first time. Felt similar to how you describe your need to be liked by other people's parents. Yeah, that's why I value mixing my friends so much, is that I think you get to know someone better by meeting their friends. For better or for worse. Sometimes I meet my friends' friends and I'm like, oh, I'm not feeling as much of an affinity towards you as I do my friend. But I really like introducing my, Seattle friends, my college friends to my high school friends, because I want them to see all those different sides of me. And I think it does make people feel more grounded or more settled in their relationship with you if you get to know those other people in their life. Bryson, who's 22 in Manhattan, said, no, LOL. No new friends for Bryson. No new people for Bryson. Okay, this one, Preston, who's 24 in DC, but Michigan is home and way better, said that he met my new roommate. I honestly didn't expect to get that close, but we found that we are equally nerdy, and I'm so valuing the time we get to spend together. I'm gay and grew up with a lot of straight guy friends because I was on a sports team in high school. In college, I had very few, and for some reason, it's a relationship type that I really seemed to miss. I'm starting to find a few more of those again. And you know what? Those straight guys are better for it. They're better for knowing you, and I'm glad they're making their way into your life again. All right, this is aspirational. That's why I'm including it. Anonymous, who's 21 in San Luis Obispo, went to the King Cruel concert in Oakland with a close friend of mine. I've been a big fan for 5+ years, so I was antsy waiting on the performance. My friend and I were talking to ourselves, but with body posture open in case anyone wanted to join. I've been to other concerts where nobody is taking advantage of the opportunities for socializing and decided I'm going to try and spend this downtime in a way that brings me energy. After realizing the two people in front of me were alone, I asked them if they had come by themselves. Once they confirmed, I asked if they would like to be our concert buddies. They were really easy to talk to, and as the conversation began clicking, both parties were more and more excited about being in the discussion. Once Archie came out, we all danced together and felt more comfortable being ourselves because the crowd was a little bit more familiar. Please socialize at concerts. Yes. Yes. But how? I like your approach here because I recently went to a Mallrat concert alone for an artist date. I think it's great going to concerts alone, but I was talking to someone and I was like, how come we don't make more friends at concerts? Like, that just seems like a really reasonable place. And I know someone that met her boyfriend at a concert, and I'm like, that's a fucking great place to meet a guy. But I went alone, and there was a photographer next to me, and I wanted, she was there alone because she was shooting the show, and she wasn't actively shooting, and I wanted to just like talk to her. I could have just like complimented her hair, but something about it felt like a little too forced, so I just sort of like refrained. And then I ended up not talking to anyone the whole show, but I'm like, I just can't believe that, like, yeah, people aren't mixing and mingling at shows. People are very insular, at least in Seattle and the West Coast, because I've been to shows up and down here. But for example, the friend I had made at lunch, that was not something I had like intended to do. It was like I had a material question I needed answered. It wasn't like I was just talking to her to talk to her. It's like I had a reason to talk to her. So I find it's much more easy when you actually have like something that you just needed to say or get out. So I love that you went with somebody, but you still asked people that went alone if they went alone and invited them in. Like, that's such a gracious and generous thing to do. And I'm sure you're better for it. And I agree, it probably would feel more comfortable dancing and stuff at concerts if you knew the people around you weren't judging you. Anonymous said, I met a new person who's new to my city who I liked until he said he thinks a certain area of the city is scary, which felt low-key racist because it's an area with more people of color. And now I can't tell what his vibe is. Yeah. Here's the reality of meeting new people. That's why I didn't ask like, who are the besties you've met this month? I'm just like, who are the new people that have entered your life? And sometimes it does go this way where you meet somebody and you're like excited at first, and then they say some off-color things where you're just like, I don't think our values are aligned here. And like, to me, that is like such a dead giveaway when someone's like, ooh, it's sketchy. Or like if someone doesn't want to take public transit, I'm like, ooh, you're probably not going to be like someone I can spend a lot of time with, because like those are pretty big values of mine. All right, question 4. Have you suffered any rejections or failures recently? How did it feel to go through that in the moment, and how does it feel now? Harkening back to the rejection sensitivity. And here's what I'll say, you guys, countless of these, probably 30 of these were about the job market. So if you're trying to get employed, just know that like everyone's struggling. Like Blake, who is 23 in Atlanta, Georgia, baby, said, I've been experiencing constant rejection from the job market. I need a full-time job, and I've been applying to all kinds of things constantly and just receiving rejection after rejection. It's demoralizing, and I really don't know what to do about it anymore. Yeah, it sucks. It sucks. And it's like, you just have to keep trudging through it when you're getting no evidence that like your efforts are proving worth it. And like, it's awful to get rejected, especially when you're like, I don't even want to work that bad. I just need a job, you know? Similarly, Mar, who's 25 in New Jersey, said, I'm currently job searching since my last job was finished in May. It's been about 4 months of job applications that only lead into rejection after rejection. I've always had issues with feeling insecure and not good enough, so these rejections have been getting to my head and making me feel worthless. I'm trying to tell myself that it's no big deal and that this happens to everyone. I just have to keep taking care of myself and not take any of it personally. It's not personal, because there are a million bright and wonderful people in this survey response sheet that are experiencing the same thing as you. Like, it has no reflection on you. Most jobs are filled like in very, I was going to say insidious, but also invisible ways that you're like, you never know how they're getting filled. All right. A quirked up shawty in San Mateo, California, who's 26, said, TLDR, my ex told me he was emotionally unavailable in late July, and that was my first/biggest romantic rejection, honestly. The writing was on the wall, so it wasn't a total blow, but he was my 13th reason to stop dating for a while, which I'm actually quite grateful for. Feels very freaking good to genuinely not have a desire to pursue that right now. And I have to agree, sometimes when you're released from the shackles of yearning, it's liberating, okay? it's like, I just don't have to like experience that excruciating like intensity. And it's freeing. Okay. This one is so good because it really relates to what I was talking about with dating apps. This anonymous Denverite, I think it's Denverite, went to a singles mixer because I figured it might be better than dating apps, which I've deleted because I was throwing money at subscriptions and boosts and still struggled to even get likes. And it was like having cold water splashed in my face. There's no escape from our cultural atomization and paying a gatekeeper for a gathering of random people who struggle with dating normally. It was mostly 30-plus-year-old men, and the one group of girls who seemed my age couldn't have been less interested in talking to me. So yeah, I cried in my car on the way back to my apartment and was super depressed the day after. But a couple weeks later, I'm contextualizing it as a confirmation that going harder at my hobbies, fitness and music, is probably the only way I'm going to make friends and meet someone that I'd be excited about romantically, since dating app algorithms seem to rank me as being mid. This was like such a hard read. This was such a hard read because I'm just like, you would think going to like an in-person mixer would be the antidote to like all the digital swiping that we're doing, but it sounds like this one instance was not encouraging. And I specifically in the question asked like, how did it feel in the moment versus how does it feel now, to elicit this kind of response where it's like, it felt super depressing in the moment and now you're sort of recontextualizing it. And I'm not going to offer unsolicited advice, but I wouldn't think of yourself as mid. Obviously I don't know what you look like, but I just don't think that any of us should consider ourselves mid. I just don't think that's good, you know? And finally, for question 4, Daria of New Jersey as well, who's 24, said they suffered a breakup of a 3-year relationship. It was literally a whole year ago, but I'm still finding it hard. We lived together up until 4 months ago. I was so in love and I really felt like they were my life person. It's hard to imagine ever finding that again. They met my aunts and cousins and were gay and from immigrant families, so that was serious, lol. Like, when will it ever get that far with anyone else? It felt hard to get to that point, and I really struggled to imagine being able to get that serious with someone new. Yeah, I mean, last podcast episode I was talking about losing a companion, and it's a devastating experience. And if I could point you any direction, I would say it would be to Indigo D'Souza's music. One amazing line: when will it ever get any better? When's it going to get any better? And then the like chorus is like, when will it ever get any better? When's it going to get any better? And I'm like, thank you, Indigo, asking the questions that we all need to be considering. On the flip side of this, what or maybe who are you cautious about pursuing right now because of the possibility of rejection or failure? Like, what is rejection sensitivity holding you back from? And the same person that wrote, I love yous stuck on the tip of my tongue, wrote, maybe not the intended direction, but I invested a lot in new friendships last year that ended up not working out, some in more catastrophic endings than others. In turn, I found myself closing up and being very particular about who I give time and energy to, which has been difficult as an extroverted instigator. So cautious about pursuing friendship because of so much failure. And I don't think there's any shame in being particular or having preferences or being picky about who you develop friendships with. Like, it can make you feel lonelier when you're around people who aren't supporting you in the way that you want to feel supported. So like, I think you're on the right track. Paulina, who's 25, said, I don't know, honestly, this job tragedy, which basically they thought they were getting a promotion and they ended up getting their contract like stopped and losing their job. This job tragedy was something that I really feared, but now I feel like I can handle it and not take it very personal. At first I felt like a failure, but honestly, I served and they didn't eat. And that was beautifully and pithily put. Sometimes we serve and they're not hungry, okay? Sometimes you're serving cunt and they're eating dick. Sorry, you guys. These are the things that pop into my head. Okay, Bella, who's 25 in Brooklyn, said that he is going to apply to be a salesperson at Design Within Reach. And it doesn't sound like you're very cautious about that. And that's great because I don't know what kind of discounts they give, but Design Within Reach makes great stuff. Let me know if you want to share that with the Cather Out community. Promo code on Bella. All right. Now we're back to the quirked up shoddy from San Mateo, California, who is cautious about dating, but more so because I've tried for over a year with no sustainable results. And I have enough data, N equals 4 men. Dude, I forgot about the whole N thing from like statistics. N equals 4 men to make some correlations and conclusions about the entire experience. Everything else that I want/need is in my possession at this time. What a beautiful thing. Yeah. It's funny when you do get enough data that you can start to make like extrapolations from it. You sound like a fellow master interpreter, perhaps. Sarah, who's 26 in San Francisco, is scared about working on a documentary film idea I have because it would mean approaching new people who are very different from me and gaining their trust. Definitely worried about rejection for this. And I think it's so audacious and bold and cool that you're working on a documentary. Like, I don't know if you've ever done that before, but I would love to talk to you more because like I want to write a screenplay and I also feel like I don't know the people that could get that off the ground for me. It's like, it's just about writing the work first and coming up with the concept first and starting it. And then I feel like people will fall into place. And again, like maybe there's someone that knows somebody here that could support. So if you want to DM me, I'd love to get in touch and see if I can support you at all. Also, if it's cathartic at all to hear about these rejections and these hesitations, there's more of this within the Rev Zine, which is a project I started with 5 beloved creatives, and we publish that monthly. So check in the description for the link if it's out. The third volume. Volume number 4 will have more of these responses since it's on a little bit of a delayed cycle. But yeah, check it out. It's just getting bigger and better. And like, I'm so proud of the direction that the zine is taking. I think it's so fun. And if nothing else, like the platform that we publish it on, it's so fun just to hear the flipping page noise that it makes when you click through. So go give that a read. I'll be creating an Instagram account for the zine soon. So it's like, there's more of like a landing page for it and potentially a website for this podcast as well. Like we're building back stronger. We're setting a foundation. So if you want more of this, it's there. But last response I want to read on this question, and then we'll finish off with the last question, is from Hannah, who's 21, who's writing in from my cozy bed that I cannot seem to sleep in, said that she is cautious about pursuing a relationship with her brother. He and I are living in the same city for the first time as adults and for the first time in close to 10 years. It's been fun truly building a relationship with him for the first time because he is 11 years older than me. However, sometimes I get really hurt because he won't make plans. He always waits for me to. I know that our relationship would be better if I went to him and told him this, but I'm nervous. There were definitely times when I wanted to have a relationship with him and he didn't prioritize it because he was in high school or had just gotten married. But the sting of that still exists, and the idea of us having the conversation of him still not doing it feels like too much maybe. This is something I've butted up against so many times in my life, is that I am such a strong initiator. This might relate back to rejection sensitivity, you guys. Everything might be connected. Everything might be interconnected in this world. Imagine that. If people have really strong rejection sensitivity, I find that usually they're not as proactive of initiators. They're scared to put plans out there. They're scared to invite people to things because that opens you up to them potentially saying no. However, I, in trying to like cope through rejection being scary, I like to initiate a lot because then it pummels my ego a bit so that I'm not so prideful and I just, take the no on the chin and move on and ask somebody else. And so sometimes in my master interpreter phase, I'm like, are they not reaching out and inviting me to things because they're sensitive or they're busy, or is it because they don't fuck with me like that? Because I think sometimes it's like if someone's not reaching out to you, it's like is the feeling not reciprocated? Like, do they not feel as interested in me as I am in them? And I think the easiest way for me to tell that is if I initiate something with somebody and they can't go, do they have a follow-up? If I'm like, hey, do you want to go to this show with me? And they say, no, I can't go, but let's hang out next week. That little tag of interest that they add on the back of the no indicates to me that they still want to further the relationship. But I think like if you say, you invite someone to something 3 times and they, for whatever reason, can't go, maybe they genuinely can't go on their calendar, what's stopping them from being like, well, let's get coffee instead? I'm like, that's usually where I'm like, if they're not making any effort when they're rejecting you, and you didn't really get into that part, but like, if it's always a little bit tough, but you like having that conversation can be really empowering because you get to know the reasons behind their behavior instead of just conjecturing. And finally, and cosmically, synchronously, in column K of my Excel sheet, we have you attended any events, gatherings, or activities solo as of late? How do you think you'd experience those things differently with other people? Because of my art estate and my experience with synchronicity and noticing things around me. Chloe, who's 19 in New Zealand, very astutely said, experiencing nature alone is a totally different experience than with others. I feel more personal and more intimate in my connection to her. It's definitely very sacred to me. Experiencing her with other people is still enjoyable, but I feel like I hide that spiritual part of me with others around, afraid that they'll judge me. And I buy into this so fucking big time. Hang it up flat screen. Because like, going out into nature, what I was talking about is that like when you're alone, your peripheral is more active. Like I feel like you can pick up on little things and notice the little moments, little motifs in nature better than if you're hiking with somebody else and making conversation, you're kind of focused on them. And like even when I was camping, every time I go camping, there comes a time in the weekend, in the 48 hours, where I feel compelled to get up off my camp chair and go for a little walk, usually right around golden hour. It's like something that just like rises in me. It's like very odd. Like it's happened without me even considering it. Like there just becomes, I feel this like impulse to like just get up and go for a walk alone at golden hour. And every time I am met with like just such a powerful like gratitude and like emotion for being out there. And I just want to run and I want to like, just really spiritually like absorb that experience. So I think, going alone to nature is an excellent example of the difference that it can be. Chris, who's 20 in College Park, Maryland, said, no, I haven't though. I have a big fear of being alone in silence. I'm a huge extrovert, and if I go more than a few days without socializing, I get very anxious and dreadful. But that also means I never really learned how to be alone and feel very awkward and vulnerable when no one's around. I too feel anxious and dreadful when I don't socialize. But that's why I was sort of speaking to like going to things alone opens up a container for potentially interacting with people and making those loose ties that I wouldn't have if I were with friends. Like if I went to lunch with a bunch of friends, I would not have looked like talked to my neighbor and sort of befriended her. Aurelia, who's 18 in Wisconsin, said, yes, I'm in an ultimate frisbee league that I go to by myself once a week. I find it really fun and the people are super nice, but I think I would be more open and comfortable in my own skin if I had someone I knew come with me. I'm working on being friends with the people on my team, so hopefully I don't feel this way for long. And I used to experience that. You're so fresh at 18. I used to experience that a lot where like it would be easier for me to show up as myself and be in my full personality when I would have somebody else there that already knew my full personality and could kind of like co-sign it. At 27, I've matured to a point, and I think I got to this around 24 or 25, where I'll show up alone anywhere and I might not be like as energetic, but like I will show my full personality because I am too tired to like mask it anymore. So I think with time, you will get there. Gigi, who's 23 in New York City, said only the church midweek service. It feels nice to go alone. It forces you to meet others, and you don't need to have it in the back of your mind, how is this other person with me feeling? You're able to be honest with yourself about the experience without it being colored from someone else's point of view. Yes, yes, and yes. Like, especially if you're, more on the sort of like people-pleasing scale, or if you like to get validation from others, I find a lot of times if I invite someone to an activity, I'm really wanting them to enjoy themselves. And so sometimes I am sort of thinking about, is this going well for them? Is this not? So going alone can free you from that sort of like thought pattern in the back of your head. Although, I feel like I could probably work on that so it's not as active. Okay, this one I was just talking to somebody about. Sophia, who's 25 in Mexico, said, movie theater, such a profound activity and essential part of my self-care routine. Sure, chatting about the movie with friends is fun, but there's something so special about witnessing beautiful art and sitting with your feelings and thoughts and having this one thing that is just for you until you put it on Letterboxd, of course. And I love experiencing art and media with other people because it is enriching for me to have the discussion and to have the discourse about it afterwards. But I will say, even if I'm in the movie theater with other people, I'm always experiencing that so personally. Like my movie viewing in a theater, it's such a personal experience for me, even if there's other people around. And I'll end on a fellow milkshake lover, Hannah in Alabama, who went to get a milkshake by herself and definitely ate it faster than if she was talking to somebody else. And that's what happens when you eat alone. You realize how fast a meal can go. Like sometimes I'll be in and out of a restaurant in like 35 minutes if they make the food fast, versus when you go out to dinner with a friend, it could be an hour and a half, 2 hours. So I believe this wholeheartedly. And I thank you for listening. If you're committed enough to still have this audio running at this point, I welcome you and encourage you to leave a rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or like this on YouTube, or subscribe to the Revelatorium with Kath Throughout YouTube channel. Leave a comment. Like, I just think that the best part of putting yourself out there is, seeing how people relate to it and respond to it, and like seeing the shared connections. So leave a little part of you behind if you would. Tap that zine link. We literally had to put it on a new platform because the first edition, like the first volume, hit like a view count limit. So I can tell a lot of you are getting a lot out of it. And thanks for being here for the double-digit era of Revelatorium with Kath Throughout. Appreciate you for listening. See you all next time, and Kath Throughout.